In today's video, we're discussing the main differences between the mirrorless and the DSLR system, showing you the pros and the cons between. If you're new here, hit subscribe for more camera news, reviews, and how-tos from the world of photography and video. Rarely is there a more debated topic than that of a DSLR versus mirrorless. Every photographer seems to have their 2 cents on the topic, and they're very opinionated on what you should be shooting with. Honestly, I don't care if Barry down the street shoots with DSLR or mirrorless camera system. What I do care is that Barry enjoys his photography. I made this video today to demystify the often mysterious world of DSLR and mirrorless camera systems, sharing with you the facts so that you can make your own decision. Let's start with the size. DSLR cameras are often larger and more bulky than mirrorless cameras. This is because they have a mirror box, a shutter and a pentaprism, whereas you don't find this on a mirrorless camera because it's mirrorless. This means there's less room needed on your mirrorless camera system, causing the mirrorless cameras to often be smaller and more dainty. You will often find though that a DSLR camera feels more robust and solid in your hand, whereas sometimes the mirrorless cameras don't feel as well made. But just lately, the mirrorless camera systems have been bridging the gap. Only last week, I went to the photo show and spoke with Nikon. I got to try out the Z6 and ZZ7. Both of these mirrorless cameras feel extremely robust and solid in the hand. They're also made of magnesium alloy, which is the same material you find your DSLRs are made out of. Let's talk lenses. This was a big concern of a lot of people thinking about switching over to mirrorless cameras just a few years back. This is because mirrorless cameras didn't have as many native lenses, obviously, as you could find with DSLRs. But that's changed now, with all your big brands jumping on board, like Canon, Sony, Fuji, Nikon, Panasonic, all making lenses native for the mirrorless camera systems. Add to that fact, you can also get a lens mount, which means you can also add the full frame camera lenses to your mirrorless camera. If you own a mirrorless camera, you've gone from having less choice to having more choice. Who would have thought? A big difference between mirrorless and DSLR is the viewfinder. On a DSLR, you will find an optical viewfinder, shortened to OVF. If you're shooting on a mirrorless system, it's going to be EVF for electronic viewfinder. Now, there are definitely some differences worth discussing in this video about these 2 options. Optical viewfinders often provide sharper, better quality images when you're looking through your viewfinder. And how you get to see your image is the image comes through the lens and is delivered through the optics of the viewfinder straight into your eyeball. With an EVF, it's different. The sensor reads the image and then the image is sent to the electronic viewfinder, and then this is where you get to see what the sensor portrays. I probably could have made that a bit more easy to understand. The EVF is generally not as sharp and as good quality as your optical viewfinders offer, but they do have some distinguishing pros. Let's discuss the fact that you have options when looking through your viewfinder. You can see things like a histogram, you can see zebra lines, you can see things like focus peaking, and many, many more. You can't see any of these through your optical viewfinder. We should probably discuss refresh rates. On an electronic viewfinder, if you have a high refresh rate, this means that you're going to experience more of a smooth movement when you've got a moving subject. If the refresh rates are lower, you're going to have that jiggity-jaggedy feel, which is not going to look very nice at all. Also, on an electronic viewfinder of a camera such as the Sony A9, you don't get blackout. If you don't know what blackout is, it's when you press down the shutter and every time the shutter closes, you get that black patch between the photo, like this. With the Sony A9, you don't experience any blackout, so you're able to see exactly what's going on between each shot. To sum this up, currently the quality of the image that you see through the optical viewfinder is better. Just about everything else with the electronic viewfinder though is better. But they're definitely bridging the gap, and mirrorless cameras will soon offer the same kind of quality as you can see through your DSLR. Also, you do have all these extra options which you can see through the EVF, which is really handy. Also, another bigger benefit which I haven't mentioned yet is you can shoot video straight through your EVF. You can look at the video with your eye up to the viewfinder and then film everything. You can't do this on an optical viewfinder, you have to use your live view screen, and there's certain circumstances that you wouldn't want to do that. Let's talk batteries. This is a big concern of a lot of people switching over to the mirrorless camera system. It probably shouldn't be though, because you can just buy more batteries, right? To add to this, DSLR cameras do have a longer battery life, which means you're going to get more video and more shots from the battery. Mirrorless cameras, still the batteries are lagging behind, and the camera systems only provide you with around about half, in some circumstances, the amount of shots you would get with a DSLR battery. But certain battery systems like the Sony Z battery provide up to about 1,000 shots, which is really quite impressive. So once again, mirrorless cameras may be slightly behind in this, but they are certainly catching up, and they're really nipping at the heels of the DSLR system. Let's talk frames per second. This is something which is different between DSLR and mirrorless cameras, even though the gap has been brought a lot closer. If you look at top-end cameras in the DSLR systems like the Nikon D5, you can shoot up to 12 frames per second, which is quick. If you then step up even more expensively to the Canon 1DX Mark II, you can get up to 16 frames per second. At £6,000! Now, if you take a mirrorless camera system like the new Sony a6400, which I'm reviewing next week, this can shoot at 11 frames per second. Yes, it's 5 frames per second behind the 1DX Mark II. But for the extra 5 frames per second, you have to pay over £5,000 more. That's right, the A6400 actually comes in at £900. This is £5,100 with terrible maths, cheaper than the 1DX Mark II for 5 frames per second. So value for money, you're definitely getting more with the mirrorless camera systems. And I do know that there are some mirrorless cameras out there, I can't think of the one at the moment, but a Sony camera which actually shoots at 24 frames per second, and that's a heck of a lot cheaper still than the 1DX Mark II. Another big pro of the mirrorless camera systems is the autofocus system. In particular, the amount of autofocus coverage points across your frame. In most of your DSLRs, you get that kind of rectangle clump in the middle of the frame, which offers you only so much coverage when you're trying to autofocus. But that means you are essentially missing out a lot of the frame when you're trying to do the autofocus. With the mirrorless systems, you have between 90 to 93% coverage, most times frame to frame. This is a big difference, guys. This means that you can shoot easier with both video and photo when you're using your autofocus points. Let's talk about IBIS now, which is image stabilization. A lot of your mirrorless camera systems offer this in the body. You don't get this with most of your DSLR cameras. In fact, which ones do? This is so useful when you're taking photos at a lower shutter speed. You have the confidence to know that you're not going to get that camera shake, which you would definitely experience with lower shutter speeds on a DSLR. The price difference between DSLR and mirrorless cameras in recent years has bridged the gap. They used to be a lot further apart, with mirrorless cameras being cheaper. But now mirrorless cameras offer probably more features than DSLR cameras do, and because of that, the prices are a lot closer. One thing I'm going to say in this video is, like it or loathe it, mirrorless cameras are both the present and the future. Look at all the big names in the camera industry like Canon, Sony, Fujifilm, Panasonic, I'm missing someone out, but all the big names are fighting and competing in this mirrorless war to produce the best cameras. They wouldn't be doing this if they didn't see mirrorless cameras as the future. Also, look at that thing that you carry around everywhere with you every single day. Looking at your mobile phone. This has a mirrorless camera. And your phone companies are now trying to produce the best results with 40 megapixel cameras, with 5 cameras on the back of a phone. This is where the future's at. So if you shoot with a DSLR camera, that's fine. I do. But I know that when a mirrorless camera comes along, which ticks all my boxes, I will definitely be swapping over to the world of the mirrorless camera system. I hope you've really enjoyed this video on some of the differences and pros and cons between the DSLR camera and the mirrorless camera. If you have any questions, please add them below and I'll be more than happy to answer them after the video. If this is your first time here at Ben's Guide, make sure you hit that subscribe button for new camera news, reviews and how-tos from the world of photography and video. And whatever you do for the rest of your day, make sure it's a good one.